How are you, Tawanda? Adam here.
I'm
Nice to meet
well. Oh, I like the backdrop. I love it.
you. Oh, good. I'm glad.
So, like, what was going on with you today?
So today, I broadcast my show Fridays from 10 to 3.
Hmm.
I DJ a bunch of house music, and I play a pre-recorded episode of my Freedom Radio Hour music business show.
Hmm.
Earlier this morning, I submitted a remix for a client. And then I also have a nonprofit job. I work for an after-school network, so I did some checking in with that, and then now I'm here
Oh,
with you.
so how is that with with your after school network? How are you managing through the COVID-19?
It's very interesting you say that. So I work, every state has an after school network. I work for New
Hmm.
Jersey's, and our primary mission is to improve the quality of after school programs. And the way that we do that is to train after school practitioners. We have a lot of professional development, an annual conference, and a lot of initiatives. So with
Hmm.
COVID, all of our in-person trainings have become virtual. So I've been Zooming with the best of them. So that's the first thing. And then really started to think about what learning looks like in a virtual space. So everywhere, all of our camps, all of our programming, if they are running, they're all of them are virtual. The governor here has allowed for hybrid, which is a mix of some in-person as well as some virtual. But
Hmm.
right now, most of the parents I've spoken to, and I'm a parent of 3 little ones, we're very scared, and we're not
Right.
trying to really mess around with that stuff. So we'll see.
Right. Yeah, it's rough up there, but it's getting better though, right?
Yes, in some ways it's getting better because we're getting more equipped and we know what's going on. We have a better grasp of what the issues are. At first, for a while, we didn't really know what was the primary issue. There were so many.
Right. Man, how long, like you're still in quarantine? Are you able to come out now?
We are able to come out now, but we are, for the most part, still in quarantine. The reopening of childcare centers, according to the governor, will begin on Monday.
Hmm.
But that's a lot of issues, staggering the entrance and exits of programs. You got to check their temperature. There's, how do you bus? How do you
Hmm.
feed? How do you deal with restroom visits, washing hands, mask usage? There's just so much,
Oh
you
my
know.
God. Yeah. It's just a lot. So I'm sorry.
But on the
Like,
upside, I get to talk about these other things, So
right.
I feel like that's my balance.
No, it's all right. So let's just get into it. Give me a brief background about how you got into the music industry.
So I got into the music industry really as a fan first. So I had been collecting music, house music in particular, which is sort of an offshoot of disco.
Hmm.
In the early 80s, it became more electronic based, and record labels really decided to rename that genre. They didn't want to call it disco because there was a huge backlash in that kind of music by the end of the 70s. It was, to put it basically bluntly, it was very corny after a while.
Right.
So the labels were like, we have to do something. And so they switched it to dance music. So
Hmm.
I like my dance music soulful. I'm in the New York City area, so I love that style, that soulful sound.
Hmm.
So I love house music, which started in Chicago, and it was named because of a club that made it popular. That club was called the Warehouse. So a house is a shorter version of that nightclub name. But then it really took over in New York City and around the globe. So I had been a fan because my cousin, who's 7 or 8 years older than I am, as a little kid, had introduced me to house music. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And then he was a DJ, and then he upped and stopped DJing because he was really trying to get the ladies, and he realized once he got his car that he didn't really need to DJ to impress them. So he gave me
Right.
all of his equipment. So imagine little Adam at like 10 years old. I have like 2 turntables, a little beat up mixer, and I was just like obsessed with trying to blend songs. And that's the love of the music started there. Now, how I got into the music business was I was working for Ernst & Young, and their international tax division was very boring.
Mhm.
And so I was building up my name as a DJ, going and playing clubs, and I was hosting a radio show not unlike this, interviewing my heroes. And every day at work, I would show up 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. But I was a great employee. I kicked butt. I was doing all their little boring work, but I would never fail. I would always be late. I up and got fired one morning.
What?
And I was so devastated. I didn't know what I was going to do. And an auditor friend of mine who worked upstairs, a fellow house head, say, hey, you know that they're hiring for interns at Masters at Work. And that's the group that consists of Little Louis Vega and Kenny Dope Gonzalez. They're Grammy nominated, and they've made a bunch of house records. So I'm like, I am not trying to intern for anyone. I had been getting a salary, so I'm like, there's no way I can go and intern now. But when I went anyway, and it wasn't an internship, it was a paid position. And so that's how I started. I started as a PA, a production assistant, and I was basically anything that they wanted. I had graphic design experience, so I was doing their design for their record labels, the credits and such. And then I graduated to writing description narratives for album projects. All of a sudden I was developing CD-ROMs with their EPKs and information in it, just because whatever they wanted. So that's my entry point in sort of the label game. And then I got to run labels after that.
It seems like you are not just rehearsed, like you've been in the music industry and learned so many doggone things, like, and to be a DJ nonetheless. Like, how did that carry over into your professionalism as a DJ?
Well, because I think that what I learned, and I don't want to get spiritual, but it's the best way I could describe it. I learned that I grew up Pentecostal, right? And Pentecostalism is very fundamentalist Christian. So they're very strict in their beliefs. They have very certain rules. And even when it came to music, Tawanda, you had to be very careful, because music, I was taught, could be an entry point for the devil to come in and mess up your life, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, what I learned is that music was therapy to me. Music actually spoke to me like a friend, like a relationship. And so it started to create a crack in my brain when I felt such peace and such happiness from the music, and so much therapy. But the pastor was really against a lot of the music I was into. And so that created a shift. And so what I learned was going to clubs and going to the record store, engaging with other DJs, was church. I just didn't know that it was going to take on this other form. So when I DJ and I'm up high playing for a crowd, for example, that's not dissimilar from a pastor preaching to his or her congregation. And so what I use, my words are the music. And even when I play, I'm not just trying to match beats or have a good time. Yes, I have a good time, but I'm trying to let it speak to me like it did as a kid. And so that is really like how it informed my love for that, is that feeling like there was a spiritual connection. And then the business stuff happened because I was just learning so much at working at labels, you know.
Right. Do you think, like with the music, it has a healing mechanism to it?
Very much so. And I write about it in my book that I lost my dad young. He was in a tragic car accident. So by the time I was 7, he was in a hospital far away, and he was in a coma for a year. He passed when I was 8, Christmas time. And I remember listening to music a lot around that time, because I was obviously very down, right? But in those moments, what I learned was that the music spoke to me through the lyrics, and it would soothe me. And it was really weird at first. It was a little scary to hear a word in a song and have it really speak to your mind, like things will get better, you know, a change is going to come, you know, things like all these things that speaking to me. And I'm like, oh, I guess this music talks to me. Let me listen. And that's how it helped me, informed me as a DJ and as a professional, because I wasn't just coming to meeting like dollars and centsing it, you know, going, yes, this is a business. This is how the math works. However, I also understand the spiritual connection. So let's talk on both sides of it.
I love it. So then, and it seems very intriguing. And I love your room that you have. So is this your oasis? Is this your Zen place for your music?
Yeah, it's my studio. You don't see it, but to my left right now, because I just finished that remix I mentioned earlier, I have a MIDI controller, a keyboard here. And then I have all of the vinyl back here are basically either I produce them, remix them, or I sign them. I've signed over 75 copyrights at this point.
Wow.
So yeah, so I try to have everything around me that sort of honors. I have a disco ball over in the distance, you know.
That's the Zen place. That's your Zen area where you can just live in the moment.
Exactly.
So when you say you've signed over 75 copyrights, how does that like when is that different from just signing an artist? Can you break that down?
Yeah. So there's two ways that at least I'm signing artists. Sometimes I sign an artist to an artist agreement. That means
Hmm.
that they are free to develop product and music and songs, and I will release it on my label, which is Mixtape Sessions. And there's no creative intervention, meaning I'm not going to tell you, Tawana, you can't do that beat. You got to do what you did before. Nope. You are free to do what you wish. I'm very transparent because I handle royalties. I pay royalties, which
Hmm.
you would be surprised to wonder how many artists I speak with that have told me they've never gotten a royalty statement in like 25 years in the game. I'm like, what are you doing? What's going
Right.
on? And you don't even realize how the time goes so quickly, and you don't know a lot of how to establish recourses or get a lawsuit going so you can recoup that money. So years go by and these artists are like, I never got paid. So
Mm.
I'll sign with you because you actually paid me. And I've
Right.
had a lot of moments where I pay them and they cry. And I'm
Oh.
like, why are you crying? And it's because I've never gotten this, or this never happened. I really do. You really do say what you really do what you say. And so one way is that artist agreement, right? The other way is where I'm signing a copyright, which means that I am signing your song, Tawanda, and that means that I will own it. You no longer own it. I'm going
Hmm.
to pay you a rate that we will agree on, and then you can keep your publishing, because there's two parts to the song. There's the publishing side, which is when you write a song, you're earned a certain publishing rate for that, just for writing it. Now,
Right.
if you release the song or perform the song, there's a different royalty for that.
Hmm.
So I'm saying if I'm signing a copyright, I own it now, you no longer own it. However, you retain your publishing, so you keep that income. I don't take that. And you have the ability, say, if you want to do a Tawanda LP, I will grant you a gratis license for you to do what you need to do on your own album. I am not holding you back.
Right.
But that's how I do it. So when people that say, yeah, cool, I'll do that, or no, I don't sell, I only keep my own copyright, in which case I'm like, fine, maybe an artist agreement might be better, a license might be better. So
Hmm.
that gives me a certain amount of time to exploit the master and do what I need to do, meaning put it
Right.
out digitally, on vinyl, etc.
Okay, all right. So you're very knowledgeable, which brings me to the discussion of the book. So tell me about it.
Yeah, so thank you for talking with me already. And so basically the book came out of years of working at labels, and I can't tell you how many times I got a call where they said, okay, my producer and we broke up, and so I'm going to
Mhm.
go solo now. I don't know what to do. I know you're very knowledgeable. I remember you from back in the day, whatever dealing we had. Can you talk with me? Okay, sure. So these 10-minute conversations became 20, 30-minute conversations,
Mhm.
which then turned into a meetup, which then turned into a possible business relationship.
Right.
What I mean is, I started to distribute other labels because I got so much of people reaching out to me.
Mhm.
What can I do? What can I do? I said, well, start your own label and I distribute you. And so I started to do that. So why am I mentioning that? It's important to know that what your own gifts are. So if your gifts are making fashion, really try to dive into that profession and see if you can use your gifts to get into the profession of your choice. So
Mhm.
remember, I got into the music business really first as a graphic designer because I had a need that the label wanted,
Right.
and that's the entry point. So I think that's the big takeaway. So all of that to say, I started to write down these experiences of what it was like, the questions that came up, and I researched a lot. I started to broadcast a show where I talked
Mhm.
about music business problems. And over the course of 11 seasons now, I took
Wow.
all of that information and wrote it down. Everything we were talking about. There's a history of streaming, how it came up. I'm talking about streaming music. So I talk
Mhm.
about that. And I parallel it with my experience running an old disco label at the time called West End Records. I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember Heartbeat Makes Me Feel So Sweet.
Yes.
So that was on West End, and Loose Joints. Is it all over my face? Yes, so all those records.
Yes.
That's West End. So I was in charge of this old disco label that wanted to be in the past and in the present. So imagine
Mhm.
that work. So yeah.
That cohesion. Yes. So that was my other thing. Like, with your music, because I meandered onto your website just to see just to see what was popping, and I noticed that you still do disco with a mesh of R&B or what's hot now. So like how do you do that?
I think first thing I did was to align myself with other people that were doing that kind of music. I
Hmm.
learned early on from some of my mentors in music that if you want to be a really great producer, you should listen to your favorite records. And
Hmm.
you should listen to them not just to bop around or to groove. You should listen for how they did it. Where's the cymbal? Where's the snare? Where's the, excuse me one second. Where is the, where's all of the pieces of the music? And so I think I got into that a lot, and I aligned myself with other people that were doing that. And my
Hmm.
flavor, I mean, I'm Puerto Rican, so I love soul and funk, but I also love salsa and bachata, and I love a lot of that world sound. So
Hmm.
I really gravitated to that. So when I produce with that aesthetic in mind, you know?
Okay, all right. So it's still like a club anthem, a club song that you're familiar with something new. So,
Exactly. And I'm listening to my favorite records to inform me of what I want to sound like, not to emulate them, but to, it's
mhm,
more sonics for me. Oh, wow, they really have that bright sound in the record. Oh, wow, they really gave a nice vintage vibe. How do I do that? That's what I'm
mhm,
trying to say. I think the other thing is to remain as original as possible. Try your
mhm,
best not to copy, because we're in a day and age where lawsuits are being initiated for
mhm.
strictly for being inspired. And if you
Right,
don't believe me, pay attention to the Marvin Gaye and the Blurred Lines case. Very
right.
drawn out lawsuit that talks just about inspiration and what happens when one producer is inspired by a song but doesn't necessarily copy it, meaning doesn't sample it.
Right, right. So how can and that's because you're knowledgeable with that situation because it wasn't the actual song. So how can you still sue a person even if it's not the song? It's just a hint of the song per se.
Yes, well, and this is a very long, drawn out case, but the short of a long story is these judges that look over these cases are not musicologists. They
Hmm.
don't have a musical background, really. They're federal judges that look at a myriad of cases, and then this case comes up in the docket. So,
Hmm.
why do I mention that? I mention that because these cases are not adjudicated by uh, knowledgeable folks in that world. So, when they decided on this case, they said, well, it does kind of sound like Marvin Gaye, but that doesn't cut it. You can't
Right.
be like, because you have that color lipstick, then you definitely copied somebody's lip line.
Oh,
You
you know.
you have to be very careful with how you prove that. And so it became a situation where it was decided in favor of the Marvin Gaye estate. And
Hmm.
then it was flipped, and then it got flipped back again. So basically, the estate is feeling good
Hmm.
because they've been able to get millions of dollars from Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams, the two behind the song. But this has opened up a floodgates to of problems where lots of other cases have come up now
Hmm.
because every little sound or syllable. We're in an era post Rihanna. Rihanna, remember she did under my umbrella,
Yeah.
the popularization of syllables is now
Right.
adjudicatable. So here's a case. Lizzo, she has one of her popular
Yeah.
songs where she has a section that she says, it's called Juice, the name of the song. There's a
Hmm.
section of the song where she goes, ay, 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 ow. Cece Peniston, who's
Hmm.
behind a song called Finally, does that same kind of refrain. There's a lawsuit now because of that.
Oh
So
God.
Lizzo didn't sample Cece Peniston, but because she sang it in that way, now there's inspiration. And where do they get that from? The Blurred Lines case. It set a
Hmm.
precedent.
Right. That's so sad because you're messing with artist creativity. You have some that copy and then you have some that's just simply inspired, like you said. That's crazy. So with you being an inventor, creating music, how does that affect you? Or do you just like, does it take the fun out of making music when you have to think so hard of what you can and cannot do?
Um, it doesn't for me because I don't feel bound by sample usage like that. I try to be as creative as I can and be as original as I can.
Mhm.
If there is a sample that I'm using, I try to clear it. I have a song on my second album, that is almost entirely a sample of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. So I reached
Mhm.
out to the state. I got the okay to use the record so I can put that out. And so you got to do that homework. You got to do that process.
Mhm.
And if you don't know what you're doing, you need to work with people that do. The last thing
Mhm.
you want to do is try to take steps independently and regret it because the contract or agreement was like Swiss cheese, full of holes, and
Right.
willing to paying because you didn't protect yourself because you didn't know how.
Right. Wow. I like you, Adam.
Oh, yeah, great.
So, who is your favorite studio session that you've recorded with?
Gosh, my first artist on my own label was my sister. And
Oh,
my sister basically went through her journal. She's a vivacious reader and writer of her thoughts, musings, and such. And she handed me this really thick journal of entries. And
hmm.
so I lyricized those entries into songs, and we released an album. So because she was my first, I have a very soft spot for that experience. So I
Oh,
have to say my sister Flora Cruz. But I also want to mention Lilias White. She's a wonderful Broadway singer. She's a Tony Award winner. She's been in The Life. She's been in Fella, the musical. Anyway, she's been in a bunch of things over the years. Lilias is a wonderful singer, and she came to my house and we recorded. She's a family friend. We recorded one song, and she found a creak in my studio and said, you got to add that to the beat of the song because it's involved in the room. So she was a
hmm.
person who got the spiritual connection I told you about.
Right, right.
I really loved our sessions because she was super talented. We wrote together very quickly. We were very synergistic, and she wanted to incorporate even the little sounds my studio makes, which I thought was brilliant.
And is that on your website, that song?
Yeah, so it's on my website, which is at mixtapesessions.com, or
Mhm.
on all platforms. The song I'm talking about with the Art Blakey sample is called "Really Love You." I did with a singer named Queen Amina, beautiful singer. So search out Adam Cruz and the Life in Times LP for that. And the Lilias White stuff we're still working on, so that hasn't quite come out just yet.
Wow.
We're kind
Okay.
of, but also COVID really put a pause on that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, and speaking of COVID, and with everything that you have going on, how is that affecting you as a businessman?
Well, to be honest, again, because I'm inquisitive by nature, I do a lot of research about the things that I'm curious about.
Hmm.
So right now, a lot of the talk is around two terms that I think is worth mentioning: the embraced artist versus the impacted artist. What's
Mm.
the difference? The embraced artist takes the COVID and runs with it. Does Zoom, live streaming, does a performance, has that link ready to buy that music, um,
Right.
takes coaching sessions on, background sessions virtually. That's the embraced artist, is making the best out of the situation, making
Hmm.
lemonade out of lemons.
Right.
The impacted artist is virtually paralyzed. He or she is
Mhm.
unable to really move forward, is doing very little for his or her artistry. And so what the reality is, if you're an artist that's really chipping away at it, you're probably both.
Hmm.
Meaning that you're dealing with paralysis, trying to work through that, and then trying to find productivity. So that's really the name of the game, is what you do in this time. The other thing that's worth mentioning is artists are having a tough time deciding the ethics of things. Is it the wrong time to release something for pay?
Right.
Because so many people are out of a job. Is it in poor taste? How do you really plan to promote or market if you don't have in-person interviews and live performances to support the release?
Hmm.
So there's a lot of discussion now, but I think now we're starting to see more innovation around what you do around this time. So that you can't go and do a physical radio interview. Here we are doing it virtually. Um, Maybe you can't do a live concert that you would normally go to, but maybe you could create a virtual concert. And now if you see in Zoom, I have like 8 or 9 or 10 people all singing songs. So it's, the creativity is limitless.
Hmm.
That's really what we're looking at. We're looking at strong impacts, because I'm talking theory with you, but the reality is it's very grim and it's very sad and miserable. If most of the artists that I know depend heavily on live performance, that's out the window right now.
Right.
And fortunately, there's a large swath that are predicted to not open at all again, because they just couldn't sustain themselves throughout this time. So
Wow.
this is a very serious time. And so while I'm talking theory with you and trends, sure, it's important, but the reality is we're talking about people's lives here.
Hmm.
There's a rush to want to do more concerts and engage in person, but by all accounts, we need to brace ourselves for a second wave. And so that
Yeah.
means more closures. That means more depressed time, fiscally speaking, for artists.
Right. Okay. So then with that knowledge, do you have a plan B?
Yes, my plan. I have several. I always have a lot of plans. Uh, so my takeaway and what I'd like to share with you and all of your listeners and viewers is that I try to pair and window everything I'm about. So even with a book, I put the book out. I just didn't put out a physical copy. I released a Kindle version. I also produced an audiobook because I know not everybody can read. They're on the go all the time and they don't have time. So I have that. I have a soundtrack of music that inspired me when I was creating the book, writing the book. So my point in bringing this up is that I'm using the book to do other things. I
Right.
also wrote a grant for here in New Jersey for the Newark Arts Council. And with that small money, I was able to put on a one-day music conference where I invited people to come together to talk about concepts from my book. So again, thinking about other things you can do to attach to your art. So in my
Right.
case, that's what I did with my book. And every time I did it, I said, come check out my show, because every Friday I'm talking about this stuff, and come listen to me DJ, because I love to play. So everything is interconnected. The last thing I want to mention is that I don't do anything without a reason. There's got to be a reason for the season. So I just don't release music and say, it's up, check me
Right.
out. I try to align it with my a birthday, the beginning of a tour. Maybe I have a book signing set up that day. Maybe I have interviews set up, lined up, and I'll align it with that day. Many times I'm like, hey, as we're sitting here, I just launched a new single just today. So thinking like that is very helpful. And also, I don't know if you watched the Clark sisters, The Lifetime, but I love to consider myself the Jackie Clark, because I keep my regular job.
Right.
You know, is this fanciful romantic idealism at play that feels that artists should only do art? That's beautiful. I agree. However, the reality is that doesn't pay the bills often. So we need to have, I hate calling it a fallback. I call it a mainstay. Mainstay, and I work at an after school network, so I keep that coming in, and that actually relieves a lot of the pressure and stress around what you do to pay rent or mortgage or that bill. And so, and it also allows me the creativity to not feel like what I'm doing I have to make money from. I don't do anything with a fiscal bent in mind. I do it because I have a love and I really want to heal myself. I write to heal myself from what ails me. Right now, we just released a song called Change, all around what's going on with the passing, with the murder of George Floyd, with the minimization of what we're dealing with, the false equivalency that we're engaging in. It was, so it's coming out in the art, you know.
Right. And then how did that affect you as a man and as a father, you know?
Very much so. I mean, I lost 12 friends from COVID, almost back to back. Then these murders have been happening for a long time, okay? And I watched my Black brothers and sisters, my Latino brothers and sisters be gunned down, pulled over for an innocent ticket and be killed, okay? And then there's also, because I've been doing this a long time, there's the AIDS epidemic that took a large swath of my heroes too, right? So what do I think about? I think about anyone who I'm coming across that I care about that has an issue with color of skin. I'm engaging with them, even if it's weird. I have a section of my family that's white because my mother remarried, so I have step family, and she married a white man. And they've posted memes that were engaging in that false equivalency. So I'm answering your question as a father of three. I talked to them. We went to the protest. It was traumatic, but we went anyway. We talked about why we did the hands up, don't shoot. We talked about, we got our family members on the phone and a family meeting to talk about what they were doing and how much it affected us. So how am I dealing with this? I'm being communicative and open with my children, with my other family members, and I'm being honest about how I feel. The other side of it too, because I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm married to a Black woman. She is in the midst of receiving these calls from well-intentioned white friends that are going, how are you doing? And she's annoyed at that.
Right.
She's like, what do you mean, how am I doing? We've been dealing with this for a long time. How are you doing? We're in quarantine. The first time you get a front row seat and you cannot leave the theater. You had to see it.
That's
How
right.
are you doing? Don't ask me how I'm doing. I'm trying to raise our family and keep them safe. We're also foster adopt parents. Our two daughters are African American, and our son is Black and Puerto Rican and white. So there's a lot of colors in our family, you know. It's like,
Right.
and we got to be honest about it. We got to be honest and not pretend that it's going to be okay and just give it time. People just being mean. No, I'm not doing them a good service if I don't tell them the truth, because it's going to be their problem when they're adults if we don't work on it now.
That's right.
Yeah.
See, Adam, I knew it was something about you that I liked.
Likewise, I really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you. So then my absolute last question, and I always say that, then I have a follow-up, but so where can, actually I have two questions. Why should artists read your book or listen to the audio?
Well, I think if for nothing else, what you're going to get is a good chronology of what happened with streaming music. What do I mean? If you ever pondered as an artist, or even not, how we got to streaming music when it used to be vinyl and all this other thing, how this took hold, I try to do my best to explain how that happened, why it happened, who were the power players, and how we're in the quagmire that we're in. What's the problem? Well, we're earning a fraction of a penny per stream. If you can imagine how many times I need to depend on you, Tawanda, and your friends and my audience to stream my song, that Really Love You song I told you about.
Right.
How many times do you have to stream it for me to make any real money? Pharrell Williams had a lawsuit against YouTube for millions of stream counts for Happy, but only earned $9,600, less than $10,000. Like,
or Happy?
Correct. I'm talking about just the stream counts from YouTube. I'm not talking about all the overall income. I'm just from that. But all those millions of stream counts, he earned $9,600 from YouTube. So can you imagine? This is what's occurring. The other issue that's occurring, I think why I use the term free the music business, is that we are in this place where we look up music for free, which is on YouTube now. And to get people to pay for the music through these subscriptions is working in a certain way, but it's not, you're not able to compete with your biggest competitor as an artist, which is not another label, not another artist. Your biggest competitor is free. How can I get you to pay so that I could live and create more of the music that you seem to like, but you're going to get the music at YouTube, which is free. Now, I do make money when you stream, even when it's free for you, but it's not at all a livable wage.
Right. Wow.
To pair and window and do other things, keep my job so that I can do what I love without losing my shirt, literally. You know?
Right. Yikes. Oh, it's hard out here for you creatives.
I also am very optimistic. I don't want to leave things on a pessimistic tone. The reason why I'm optimistic is because what you see is a shift happening. For example, Congress has stepped in to deal with a large swath of income that's suspended, black box. That means if there's money that's due to you as an artist and they don't know how to reach you, that money is collected over time to the tune of billions of dollars. So Congress has stepped in to make possible the creation of the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective. It's a fancy way of saying anytime you stream something on Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and all of them, they send a notice to the Copyright Office to say, hey, somebody streamed that and therefore it earned money. We want to pay Tawanda, but we can't find her.
Right.
So usually the Copyright Office helps to find the person, but if the information when you put out music is not filled in correctly, that's called metadata. All of the fields, so it says Tawanda and the song and your publishing and all of that information, if it's not there correctly, they don't pay you because they don't know where to send the payments.
Right. Wow.
So the MLC is working on how to basically find the rights holder, but it's billions of dollars. So point of advice, if you're an artist, do your math, do your work, sign up where you need to with Sound Exchange and all that you need to do to make sure your performance money, your mechanical money is coming directly to you. If you're signed up with BMI or ASCAP, make sure you add those titles, everything new that you've got coming out, add it to their database, because that's the way they know. Oh, Tawanda's got a new record. Oh, okay, let's track it, you know. And so they can let you know how much you've earned. But they can't do that if you're not telling them.
Right. You have so many people dropping music and not really thinking about that you know, just popping it on SoundCloud, popping it on YouTube, and not really thinking about the monetary part
Right.
of it. So, and that's where you come in.
Free the music idea is like artists needs to free themselves from this idea that they're studio rats. They should just be in the studio or live on stage, and everybody else just does everything else. That's not going to work. When you're an artist today, you have to be an artist, promoter, marketer, a lawyer, a negotiator, a parent, an educator, you know, a side hustler, you know, all these things you have to be. But it's still worth it.
Multi-hustling.
It's still worth it for me. I get a lot of therapeutic quality and value from it.
Well, that's good. You're just just a well of knowledge for sure. So thank you. So again, tell our viewers who's watching this where they can follow you, and then where they can listen to your audio or purchase your book.
Sure. So I'm on Amazon. So search up Free the Music Business, Tips and Tales from an Indie Music Nerd. I call myself a nerd because I feel like everybody has a nerd in them for whatever it is. It could be outfits or makeup or sneakers or being a community person, but everybody has a little nerd in them, right?
Right.
So I have on Amazon. I have a Kindle version. Also, if you're on the go, I have an audiobook available on Audible. And I have a soundtrack available on all digital platforms. If you want to check me out, check out djadamcruz.com. And also on my YouTube channel, I have a show called The Freedom Radio Hour. I do 11 seasons of music business news and trends. So search out Freedom Radio Hour. I also have an app. So search out the app.
That is the app on Apple or?
Yes, it's available on Apple. And just search out Freedom Radio Hour. It has our podcasts. It has the videos. It has music, merch. And mixtapes.
Okay, so when you say merch, what is that? Like merch?
I have shirts, mugs, clocks. I have banners. Yeah.
Okay, all right. You have like 5 backup plans.
I think that's the way. Yeah, I'm a person that has a lot of boiling water happening. I have a lot of pots cooking, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. So if that was a lesson that you can give an artist, it would be to make sure they have a backup to the backup, right?
Yep, and there's nothing wrong with being Jackie Clark.
Big facts. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Adam. And I just hope everything works out, and then we get out of this COVID, and you can get to making music the way you know that you love and enjoy.